should automation be regulated? So we're, coming of age where, automation will be taking over a lot of our workforce, or the possibilities of that. What kind of regulations, if any, do you think we should look at trying to have in place? Anything you would get behind?
I don't think automation is coming whether you like it or not. And then this whole concept of, the robots taking over the jobs, in principle, I actually support that. But it comes along with this whole slew of other things. I would like it if the robots actually did do more of the jobs and the people had more time to do the things that really called to them as a result of that. So again, it's a symptom versus problem question for me. The symptom is that the workers are losing their jobs and people are getting stuck in situations that suck, and the robots are getting blamed for that. But the real problem isn't that the robots are doing the jobs. It's more the problem is that there's no catch-all for the people to then find their way into something better. Because if I'm doing a job that a robot can do, in a perfect world, I would hand that off to the robot, and then I would graduate into something that was a little bit better for society and humanity. I mean, look at members of this team who are able to spend, through whatever means, regardless of the means, who are able to spend their time making the world a better place. Why couldn't we turn that situation and instead of fighting against the robots taking over the world, train that workforce to make the robots better robots and have them perhaps learn to program the robots? I don't know. I mean, we're going to get into a whole conversation about the Matrix here that's pretty dangerous. But in general, I don't think that the problem on the surface is the way to attack the problem. I think we need to get deeper than that.
Wonderful. So can you go into, I know that you have been active in your community for a long time. I would like to know, some of the things you have done that you might be more standout, nonprofit work, political work. We know personally, but we want everybody else to know kind of what you've been doing out in the community regarding helping.
Yeah, a lot of ways I could answer that. Well, God, where to start?
I'm sorry, but that's awesome that you have to say that because there's so much. So I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's also it's unusual to field a question to talk about myself in that way. So I'm trying to organize my thoughts in a good way. An example of how I go about making change on a day-to-day basis is what comes to mind. There are two of them. One is I this morning I left my car and I looked kind of in the backseat window as I was on my way in, and my first voice pops into my head is like, "Damn, Ty, your car is messy. it's insane in there." And the reason it's messy is because it's full of there's like 40 computers in there right now. But the reason there's 40 computers is in there is because I'm going to rebuild them, and I'm trying to have one on hand, literally, that's wiped clean, fresh, and ready to rock, that I can literally hand out on the street. Because in this day and age, we can solve a bunch of problems with education, and so I believe that if you can get an unrestricted, breakable, thrashable laptop in the hand of a kid, you can plant the seed for a senator in the future who's going to change the world, or whatever. It doesn't matter what them to follow their path. And so I choose to, these days, I spend a lot of less time out. I'm not at the rallies as much as I'd like to be, but I am packing around empowerment tools at every moment, and every spare moment I'm fixing them, harvesting them, because we got to get a lot of leftovers at my work and trying to move them along to the next place. So on that's kind of the microcosm of how I've currently tried to make proactive change. And I know it doesn't sound very political, but if you can imagine what these kids will grow up to do, and you guys are using this technology to interview me right now, like that kind of thing. just getting these kids to be able to master that, or not just kids, adults. I'm totally happy to whoever, it doesn't matter to me. And these aren't, there's not a lot of expenditure here. These are old rigs that are using open source software and whatnot. And then the other example that comes to mind is less common in my current life. I'm a father now and getting older and doing the land-based thing. But back in the day, I was a full-time activist, and I spent a lot of time living in trees to try and make change. And so if people are curious as to who I am and where I come from, I'm the kind of guy that would be hanging in a tree so that it wouldn't get cut down to try and battle climate change. And so there's this whole rich chapter of my life where that was kind of the story. I was also trying to make it and surviving, spending time on the streets and doing whatever I had to do to get by, where the focus was to actually do something that would actually make a difference. And when I think back to all of my all the things that I've offered to the people, one of the things that stands out in my memory is that there are a dozen old growth redwoods that still stand, and they probably will stand for our lifetimes. And that kind of thing really matters, even though it seems like a small thing in the grand scheme of battling climate change, that a dozen trees might still stand. In symbolically speaking, that is a beautiful thing that I'd like to see more of that. I would like to see, I'd like to see people so well supported that when it was really time to stop our backyard from getting mowed down, and it was being done for the wrong reasons by the wrong people in the wrong ways, that we would just stop it.
Thank you. So there is